The King's Avatar, Chapter 1191 Swift Hand Speed, Audio Source, WuxaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1191, Swift Hand Speed Translator, Nomyami Editor, Nomyami. The tip of the sword dropped down, but it was a miss. Afterwards, Flying Sword was already flying out. Tyrant's Destruction. Lucio B's triangle triple slash had been extremely fast, but what about Tang Rou? Her speed was no slower. Her dragon tooth turned into a tyrant's destruction, keeping up with the dizzying triple slash. Before the sword could strike her, her spear thrust into Flying Sword's body, throwing him to the side. Whoa! Lucio B was shocked. In the Happy vs Excellent Era Challenger League finals, he had a very deep impression of Tang Rou's hand speed. Zhu Bin had asked how he would compare, but Lucio B hadn't replied. And now, Tang Rou had been able to catch his triangle triple slash, hitting him first before he could hit her. Although his triangle triple slash required more inputs, the difference in attack speed between Soft Mist Spear and Lucio B's sword could not be ignored. Spears usually had low attack speed. Most had an attack speed of 2. On the other hand, the Blade Master's lightsabers were the fastest weapons. Most had an attack speed of 10. In Glory, the attack speed on weapons were rated from 1 to 10. However, the difference between a 1 and a 10 wasn't by a magnitude of 10. In reality, the difference between a 1 and a 10 was around 20%. Glory was an input-heavy game. What truly decided an attack's speed was the player's hand speed. But the difference between having a weapon with an attack speed of 1 versus a weapon with an attack speed of 10 indicated that if you wanted to match the speed of a 10 attack speed weapon with a 1 attack speed weapon, your hand speed would need to be 20% faster. Thus, a faster weapon attack speed was never a bad thing. However, the game was set up such that weapons with lower attack speed had higher physical attack. Finding the right balance was an issue every player had to consider. Blade Masters tended to use lightsabers and takis, but there was no shortage of greatsword and broadsword users. The weapons used by Soft Mist and Flying Sword. Soft Mist Spear, Dancing Fire Flowing Flame, had an attack speed of 4. Among spears, it was already a very fast one. Along with the bonus stat of attack speed +1, its total attack speed was 5. Flying Sword's lightsaber, Chasing Spirit, had an attack speed of 10. It had a bonus attack speed of +2. In total, Chasing Spirit had an attack speed of 12, 7 points higher than Dancing Fire Flowing Flame, a 14% difference. With this difference, for Soft Mist to match Flying Sword, Tang Rou's hand speed had to be above Lucio B's. However, in a fight, the two sides wouldn't be starting their attacks at the same time and checking to see who reached the other side first. Because of the inputs required for skills, variations between skills, and differences in attack speed, it wasn't easy to make a simple comparison. Most players used their intuition to make a judgment. Lucio B's intuition surprised him. In this match against Tang Rou, he had actually been quite mentally prepared for it. Because of the 1v3 bet, Tang Rou was always first to go in the group arena. Because of this order never changed, it was easier for opponents to prepare for. For example, Lucio B knew that he would be playing against Tang Rou, so he focused his preparations towards her. She really is fast. She can completely keep up with me. But if you think this is the fastest I can go, then you're very, very wrong. As Flying Sword was thrown aside by Tyrant's destruction, Flying Sword also made his move. A sword light flew out, leaving a sword mark on Soft Mist. What a fast sword! Tang Rou saw the attack. She wanted to dodge, but her hand speed couldn't keep up. Wow! Tang Rou couldn't help but be astonished. Flying Sword had been thrown aside by Tyrant's destruction, but in that split second, Lucy OB had been able to leave an attack behind. Although the attack was more for show, I still had the initiative. Dancing fire, flowing flame moved, drawing after images one after the other in the air. Dragon Tooth, double stab, attacks that couldn't be more normal, thrust fiercely towards Flying Sword. Clang clang clang. Clang 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 clang. The weapons of both players collided with each other repeatedly. The two competed speed against speed. Sword light and spear shadows collided and separated. Blood blossomed in the air. Everyone stared in awe. The commentator and guest in charge of commentating the match were speechless too. What was there to say? With how fast the two were fighting, by the time they finished talking about a point, victory might have already been decided. There was no chance for them to say anything. This was where the difficulty in commentating a glory match lay. When the two sides started fighting, there were too many small details and mix-ups involved. And if the pace was also fast, there was no room for commentators to give a detailed analysis anywhere. And with how fast Tangro and Lucy OB were playing, the commentators couldn't even use the skill names strategy. By the time he finished calling out the name of a skill, both sides had used another 3 skills. Too fast. Pan Lin was able to squeeze in 2 words. It was truly somewhat embarrassing to not be able to point out anything. Overly fast. Li Yibo was an experienced person with a professional experience. There might not be time to talk about the details, but he could talk about the overall picture. He didn't look at the interactions between the two, just their skill trees. There seemed to be a bunch of clocks on their skill trees. More and more of the icons on their skill trees were going on cooldown. Rhythm. There was no rhythm. These two people were constantly playing catch-up. You're faster than me, I'm faster than you, you chase, I chase. It became a competition of pure speed. If they continued to use skills at this pace and this quantity, there won't be any skills to use soon. Or perhaps only low-level skills would be left. Li Yibo wasn't wrong. Stab stab stab. Slash slash slash. Lucy OB was putting in inputs like crazy, but he still wasn't able to thoroughly suppress his opponent. At this moment, he put in inputs, but the attack he had wanted to get failed to come out. Flying Sword's offensive suddenly halted. How? Lucy OB was only astonished for a second before he immediately realized the problem. The skill was on cooldown, so it couldn't be used. But the skill was still on cooldown? Not good. Lucy OB realized that his hand speed had gone out of control. His blind pursuit of speed had put him in this awkward position of being unable to connect skills because they were still on cooldown. It was because of this imbalance between hand speed and rhythm, a frequent mistake in the past, that he had been seen as a player who was wasting away his talent. Fortunately, he noticed it and fixed it. He started learning how to effectively utilize his hand speed, going as fast as he could when he need to, but also suppressing it when he need to be slower. This imbalance in rhythm stopped appearing after being aware of it. After fixing the problem, Lucy OB improved immensely. Last season, he was just a bit away from making it into a All-Stars. This season he hoped that he could break through. But in this match, his old problem had unexpectedly returned. Without him being aware, his hand speed had sped up to such a level already. She really is an opponent that's hard to stay calm against. Fortunately, Tangro had been chasing after his hand speed, so she had also been recklessly wasting her skills to reach that speed. Even though this should have been a huge mistake and a huge opening, it wasn't really one in this match because both sides had committed the same mistake. Ha, really? Lucio B had wanted to say something in the chat, when dancing fire flowing flame flashed before him. whoosh!worldaudio.com. A normal attack. Lucio B swiped his mouse and flying sword blocked this attack. Soft Mist wasn't done though. She attacked again, this time with a dragon tooth. Since the vast majority of their mid-level and high-level skills were on cooldown, the two sides were mainly using low cooldown sub-level 20 skills or normal attacks. She's still attacking even in this situation. How stubborn. Lucio B sighed, while warding off Soft Mist's attacks. But he gradually realized that something wasn't right. Normal attacks had no cooldown and could be used at any time. Low-level skills had short cooldowns. After a few exchanges, they would be back up and could be used again. Soft Mist was relying on this offense. It was just like before, dense and fast. As a result, Lucio B, that when he noticed his excessive speed and prepared to control his rhythm, Soft Mist continued to stubbornly commit this mistake. She was still keeping up with her previous hand speed, or it could be said that she was still burning, still trying to think of a way to go faster. Lucio B didn't know how he should assess her. All he knew was that he was starting to have trouble warding off her attacks. What is this girl thinking? Lucio B was astonished, but he felt like he had discovered something. Among these were memories of the past. When he failed to meet expectations by blindly utilizing hand speed, he made adjustments had made huge improvements. Tang Ro was like him, who hadn't realized the issue and continued to charge through wildly. If I had continued along this path, how would things have turned out? Lucio B discovered that he had never thought about this question before. After not getting the results he wanted from this playstyle, he had quickly made changes. As for Tang Ro, did she know? Or was she just stubborn? Lucio B didn't know. He only knew that he was having trouble defending. A feeling rose in his heart. The two used to be speeding along neck and neck, but midway through, he suddenly realized that there was perhaps a better way to win, so he stopped speeding along and went to study. The person who kept on speeding along instantly overpassed him. Was this limited to just this match? Or his entire professional career? Would the one who won in the end be the one who continued to speed along, or the one to study a better way? Lucio B's flying sword fell with this confusion in him. He didn't fall to Soft Mist's normal attacks and low-level skills, but rather her overwhelming tempo. End chapter. The King's Avatar. Chapter 1192. Imaginary Enemy. Audio source, whoosh!worldaudio.com. Chapter 1192. Imaginary Enemy. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. I lost. The instant flying sword fell, Lucio B collapsed against his seat in a daze. His adjustment after slowing his rhythm had become opening for the opponent. He had figured out this correct method with difficulty, only for it to be broken. Was this method not actually the best choice? Lucio B now began to doubt himself, just like he had doubted himself when he had used his explosive hand speed time and time again and yet was unable to achieve victory. Carrying this shock, he walked out of the player booth, off stage, returning to Tiny Herb's player area. You played well. His teammates tried to cheer him up, and Lucio B managed a weak smile. They patted him on his shoulders, but they didn't worry about him too much. It was normal to be disappointed and melancholic after a defeat. If he had come back in high spirits, that would be more worrying. Lucio B sat in his seat. Lowering his head, he looked at his two hands. His hands were still very warm, fatigued after the high-speed playing in that match, and they were still trembling non-stop. Suddenly, a cold drink landed in the palm of his hand. Lucio B lifted his head and saw Zubin's face. Still feeling the aftertaste of that match, Zhu Bin chuckled. Liu Xiaobi shook his head. There really wasn't too much of an aftertaste. It was just two players losing control of their hand speeds, making two different choices. One didn't care and continued to go wild, while the other recognized the problem and immediately corrected himself. No matter how you put it, the second option sounded like the correct one. But the victory had gone to the one who continued to go wild. It's not a big deal if you lose a match, but don't lose your conviction with it, Zhu Bin said. Liu Xiaobi was startled. Conviction? What was his conviction? Liu Xiaobi looked at this player in front of him. Zhu Bin hadn't even been in Tiny Herb for a whole season. He wasn't any more senior than him here, but he had integrated into Tiny Herb extremely well. And his playstyle was distinct and unique in the professional scene, a style that grinded away at time. Even the audience would become impatient watching him, so despite his skill, he wasn't a very popular player. Before he transferred to Tiny Herb, he always lost by a large margin in the All-Star poll. Tiny Herb's stage allowed him to shine more, but he didn't abandon his usual style. This was his choice. No matter where he was, he would perform this style unwaveringly. Sometimes a choice isn't right or wrong. It just depends on whether or not you have the conviction to carry it out. Quote. As Zhu Bin spoke, his gaze landed upon another person. Wang Jiexe, captain of Tiny Herb. Ever since he entered the team, he was Tiny Herb's soul, a presence that every person here respected and admired. When Liu Xiaobi had been unable to get the results he wanted with his early methods, he made changes with a determined resolve. Because there was this successful role model in front of him, he had complete faith that he could make these changes. Wang Jiexe, the one called the Magician. But he threw away this title, and it wasn't until he changed many of his battle methods that he led Tiny Herb to its summit. Wang Jiexe's story was the source of Liu Xiaobi's faith. It was what gave him the determination to change his style and make a breakthrough. But after this battle, his determination was now wavering. This just showed that he wasn't determined enough. It also showed that he was far from mature enough. The road was still long. Liu Xiaobi cracked open the drink and took a long gulp. By this time, Tiny Herb's second player of the group arena had taken to the stage. Xiao Yun, Tiny Herb's battle mage, Euphorbia. Number 2. Tang Rou quietly counted in her head. 1v3. After that day, she hadn't made any speech on the matter. Even on a normal day at Happy, it was never brought up, as though it didn't exist. But in her heart, she hadn't forgotten this for even a second. I have to complete this. Tang Rou didn't know how many times she had repeated this in her heart. And now, this was the final chance in her bet. This was opponent number 2, and Soft Mist had 57% health remembering. To take down an opponent in the group arena and still have over half health remembering was generally an extremely pleasing result. But for Tang Rou, this was far from enough because her goal was to take down all 3 opponents by herself. But now, after only defeating Liu Xiaobi, she'd already used up 43% of Soft Mist's health. This 57% remembering to her was a tired remnant. To clash head-on with a player who relied on his hand speed, the burden on her own 2 hands was unimaginable. Added to the crazy intense training Tang Rou had undergone these past 35 days, it would take a toll on even the youngest and most fit people. And now, she still had to face 2 opponents, one of whom was Wang Jiexe. Tang Rou had known for a very long time just how fearsome this opponent was. But now, there was not a trace of fear in her heart. Defeat the one before her, and then, Wang Jiexe. Her thoughts about Wang Jiexe stopped there, nothing more. At the start of the second battle, Seo Yoon's message appeared in the chat. "Pretty girl, your show ends here." There was a taunt in Seo Yoon's words. 1v3. In his eyes, it was just a show. Seo Yoon had strong feelings of hostility toward Tang Ro. In the team, he had heard that Tiny Herb was interested in Tang Ro and wanted to recruit her, but she had unfortunately turned him down. Tiny Herb already had a battle mage player, himself, Seo Yoon. And yet, the team was now looking at another battle mage player. Seo Yoon wasn't at the point where he needed a successor. The fact that Tiny Herb had their eye on her, did that mean that this girl was better than himself? Such a conclusion wouldn't sit well with anyone. Towards the team, towards Tang Ro, Seo Yoon was rather dissatisfied. And now he had a chance to face off against her. Tang Ro had made that promise of quitting if she couldn't complete a 1v3 in 5 rounds or whatever, and it just so happened that he was in the 5th round, stuck right in front of Tang Ro. Seo Yoon was rather excited to be able to send this Tang Ro, this player who had threatened to replace him, out of the professional scene. It was his pleasure. But he didn't dare to underestimate Tang Ro. In fact, ever since hearing the news that the team had interest in recruiting Tang Ro, he had started paying a lot of attention toward her. Tang Ro became a powerful competitor in his eyes. Any of her matches, any reports about her, Seo Yoon paid particular attention, so much so that his teammates thought that he was trying to make some advances toward this pretty girl. Advances? Hell. She'd better hope she doesn't fall into my hands. Quote. This is what Seo Yoon said to Jo Ye-bai, one of his teammates with whom he was close. And now, Tang Ro really fell into his hands. I won't let you have a good time. Seo Yoon reaffirmed his determination and controlled his euphorbia to walk out of the spawn point. Although Soft Mist only had about half health remembering, Seo Yoon still hoped to move strategically if possible, instead of meeting her charge directly. Even if he didn't like Tang Ro, he had to admit her ferocity. Direct attacks weren't his forte, he didn't want to use his weakness against her strength. But the problem was, this windy pavilion map had hardly any cover on it. There was no way to strategically move to launch a sneak attack. Seo Yoon was helpless and could only direct his character to charge forward. At the opposite corner, Tang Ro's Soft Mist was doing the same thing as always, rushing without any hesitation. What advantage did he have over Tang Ro? Imaging Tang Ro as his opponent, Seo Yoon had thought about this comparison consciously and unconsciously many times now. WuxRWorldAudio.com. Experience. Compared to Tang Ro, he was introduced to glory earlier, he trained as a battle mage earlier, he became a pro player earlier, he played pro matches earlier. Even though he wasn't a very stable core member of Tiny Herb, he was still in Tiny Herb, this powerhouse that had won 2 championships. Even a casually discarded rookie from this team was picked up and treated like a treasure at Happy. To have a piece of land in this kind of team, this was already something of which to be proud. And a mere rookie wanted to replace him. Seo Yoon grew angry. He didn't care that this was just the subjective will of Tiny Herb, or that Tang Ro's refusal had in some ways helped him. He didn't dare express any of his feelings toward Tiny Herb. But this dissatisfaction accumulated in his heart until it finally found its target, Tang Ro, as though she had been the one who actively wanted to steal his position. The more Seo Yoon thought, the more hatred and rage he felt. Dragon breaks the ranks. This was an opening move that Tang Ro liked to use, but in this battle between 2 players of the same class, it was Seo Yoon who used it first. Not only did he want to win, he wanted to win beautifully. He wanted to show his team that he was far superior to Tang Ro. Anything she could do, he could do better. This dragon breaks the ranks came very suddenly. But a powerful attack at the beginning rarely hit the opponent because the starting animation for such powerful attacks was generally more noticeable than the ones for smaller attacks. Tang Rou was now a skilled battle mage player, and as soon as she saw Euphorbia's pose, she immediately controlled Soft Mist to dodge. Even though Xiao Yun also immediately made adjustments, when his spear shot out, it didn't manage to land on its target. Soft Mist dodged to the side, and after Euphorbia's powerful attack whistled by, dancing fire flowing flame leapt out. Sky Strike. Soft Mist's first attack in this round was rather plain. Euphorbia immediately leapt backward, as though still carrying some remnants of the dragon breaks the ranks. After avoiding this Sky Strike, his spear was already sweeping wildly towards Soft Mist. From top to bottom, this was a Draconic Crusher, a level 50 battle mage attack. If this attack landed, the target was guaranteed to fall over on the ground. And the priority of a level 50 skill was much higher than low-level skills, so even if Soft Mist was able to adjust the angle of her Sky Strike, she wouldn't be able to parry this Draconic Crusher. So Xiao Yun was completely confident. But Soft Mist's Sky Strike continued toward him. Ridiculous, I'll flatten you. Xiao Yun's mouse moved faster. The Draconic Crusher pressed down on Soft Mist and her Sky Strike. Ping! The two spears met in the air, and the result was decided in an instant. The parrying effect of Sky Strike didn't seem to exist and was immediately smothered by Draconic Crusher. What about Soft Mist? It seemed that this attack was too strong, so strong that she had no way of bracing herself against it, instead rolling to reduce the force. But that movement wasn't necessary. Xiao Yun was very clear. The Sky Strike was just crushed by the Draconic Crusher, but there was suddenly a jump, and a dragon tooth leapt towards him like a viper. End chapter. The King's Avatar. Chapter 1193. What's fearsome is her overwhelming determination. Audio source, wuxia-world-audiobook.com. Chapter 1193. What's fearsome is her overwhelming determination. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. She's so fast. No wonder Lucio be lost. Xiao Yun had Euphorbia dodge. Although he had been mentally prepared for this situation, when it actually happened, he became a bit nervous. Indeed, this was not an opponent he could take head-on. With this, Xiao Yun's prediction was confirmed. And since he knew this long before, of course he had prepared a strategy. If she wants to be fast, then I can't let her be fast. With my understanding of the battle mage class, I can definitely suppress her rhythm. In a battle between two players of the same class, each side had a greater understanding of what changes could be made in battle. If Tang Rou weren't a battle mage, Xiao Yun wouldn't have this confidence, but since she was a battle mage, he believed that he could control the flow of battle. After all, his opponent was still a rookie, with limited understanding and control of the class. In this same class battle, he had a slight advantage, Xiao Yun believed. He calmly controlled his character to jump backward and avoid Soft Mist's dragon tooth. Another jump let him avoid Soft Mist's subsequent double stab. After the double stab, dancing fire flowing flame suddenly flipped up to a Sky Strike, the skill's cooldown having just ended. But Euphorbia stuck his spear downward and this Sky Strike was suppressed. None of Soft Mist's consecutive attacks managed to succeed. The corner of Xiao Yun's mouth twisted into a cold smirk. He felt like a cat toying with a mouse. But a magic chaser was already flying toward him, a light chaser accumulated from the earlier Sky Strike. As expected, not a second of rest. This light chaser wasn't outside of Xiao Yun's expectations either, and he very calmly dodged it. Soft Mist immediately came with another attack, even faster, with the speed bonus granted after firing a light chaser. This, too, Seo Yoon had accounted for, and after he dodged the chaser, he was already defending against the sudden attack that would come next. And his responses to her attacks weren't just ordinary dodges, as that would just give Tang-ro more space to increase her speed. Seo Yoon relied more on parrying attacks, limiting her ability to chain attacks and ruining her rhythm. He did fairly well. After all, he was a member of Tiny Herb, and he had trained with the Battle Mage class for several years now. He was very clear on where and how to attack to maximally interfere with her attack rhythm. This again. Tang-ro was no stranger to this current situation. In fact, it could be said that she had just experienced this last round against Heavenly Swords. Even though Happy had won the 2 points from the group arena, Tang-ro, who was the first to come out, was defeated by the second person on their team. Heavenly Sword's second player, Wen Qibai, was a battle mage. Tang-ro had just experienced a same-class battle last round, and this round she once again fought against a same-class player. Seo Yoon and Wen Qibai both fought with this interference style that could only be executed by someone familiar with the class. But Seo Yoon, compared to Wen Qibai, was more practiced, and Tang-ro was suppressed harder than she was last round. It was harder, but she knew it better. Tyrant's destruction. Tang-ro still refused to give up on attacking. That smirk continued to hang on the corner of Seo Yoon's mouth. With a practice motion of the mouse, his euphorbia also unleashed a tyrant's destruction, crashing towards soft mists. An instantaneous control, an instantaneous attack, and in an instant, the spears were about to collide once again. But suddenly, dancing fire flowing flame suddenly shot upward. In the last moment, just before the two skills were about to hit, Tang-ro adjusted the direction of her skill. No time to delay, the timing couldn't be off by a hair. She did it. Dancing fire flowing flame and the spear that euphorbia swung toward her slipped past each other. And soft mist jumped into the air, and in the same way, with hardly a second to spare, she just barely dodged his attack. Barely, but she managed to dodge it. And Seo Yoon, after discovering this change, it was already too late to react. Tang-ro pushed her change all the way to the end, leaving no time for Seo Yoon to make any follow-up move. Not just him, even someone with 10 or 100 times the hand speed wouldn't have been able to keep up with Tang-ro's change at that moment. Shit. Seo Yoon only had time to shout in his mind. He didn't even have the chance to retract the smirk on his mouth when euphorbia was hit by soft mist's tyrant's destruction. At the same time, flames burst forth and landed upon euphorbia's body, as dancing fire flowing flame's special effect, Flowing Flame, was activated. After one attack succeed, things got easier. The next skills came one after another in a combo. This was a combo. If this offense could be casually broken, then it wouldn't be called a combo. Seo Yoon's euphorbia and the dancing fire flowing flame in soft mist's hands met over and over again. Tang-ro was completely immersed in the controls. Of course, she hoped with this one chain of combos she could defeat her opponent, but sadly, things didn't turn out that way. Seo Yoon, who understood battle mages well, quickly found a flaw in Tang-ro's combo. Furious Dragon Strikes the Heart. Seeing the flaw, Seo Yoon directly used a powerful attack. Tang-ro hastily responded, soft misdrawing back her spear, but she had no way of completely parrying such a high-level attack. Soft Mist's offensive came to an abrupt end, and Seo Yoon used this Furious Dragon Strikes the Heart to retaliate with a new high of attacks. Tang-ro's response to this offensive was completely different from Seo Yoon's. Seo Yoon would observe, anticipate, search for an opportunity. But when she faced each of Euphorbia's attacks, she would always try to make a move. She controlled her character non-stop, as though Euphorbia's attack sequence contained flaws everywhere. But in reality, Euphorbia's attacks were not interrupted. Tang Rou struggled endlessly, but to no avail. But her struggling like this gave her opponent a lot of pressure. Xiao Yun felt a strong sense of danger, as though if he made the tiniest slip, it would immediately cause him to lose this match. This state was unexpected for Xiao Yun. He was nervous, he didn't dare become careless, but the more he felt this, the more flawed his controls became, often scaring himself into a sweat. Thus, Xiao Yun was unable to maintain his offensive for long before he, too, finally revealed an opening. The unrelenting Tang Rou instantly seized the opportunity. Even death wouldn't have stopped her as she surged forward. One attack landed, and immediately a chain of attacks followed. If Xiao Yun seized a chance and interfered again, no worries, she'd just come again. The two sides traded the initiative back and forth, but whether or not she was attacking or being attacked, Tang Rou's soft mist always maintained an offensive stance. When attacking, she was always moving forward. When being attacked, she caused a constant fear of counterattack in the opponent, like a thorn in the back. The sweat on Xiao Yun's forehead accumulated, and the string in his heart was wound tighter and tighter. The tighter he was, the more he didn't dare relax his hands or legs, and Xiao Yun's apprehension only increased. The more he didn't want to make a mistake, the more often a mistake would come find him. The battle seemed like a continuous exchange of attack and defense positions. But Xiao Yun's attack periods grew shorter and shorter, and Tang Rou was seizing opportunities and attacking for longer and longer periods of time. Under these exchanges, Xiao Yun watched as soft mist slowly closed the gap between their health levels. He grew panicked, and he started making more mistakes. He once again reminded himself to stay calm, stay stable, but his two hands were so stiff, so unresponsive, it was as though they were no longer his own. Where did his normal, casual and easy controls go? Xiao Yun wanted to stuff his hands in his mouth and bite down hard. His 43% health lead was pulled to a tie, and then he started losing. The more Xiao Yun played, the more chaotic he became. He no longer had a fraction of the confidence he'd had at the beginning of this match. All he had was overwhelming panic. How could it be like this? Xiao Yun didn't understand. He had prepared thoroughly to face Tang Rou. He was confident, so how come as soon as he was on stage, he couldn't perform? How was his condition today so bad? Xiao Yun couldn't stabilize himself or control the situation. WuxRWorldAudio.com. He could only lose. Tang Rou completed the 1v2, successfully entering the third battle of the group arena. The crowd was silent. 1v2. This result was already valiant, but because Tang Rou promised a 1v3, she wasn't done yet. Tiny Herb's next player on stage was their captain Wang Gxe, and Tang Rou, soft mist, after this battle, only had 16% health remaining. Coach Lee, what do you think? This commentator Pan Lin spoke haltingly. To challenge Wang Gxe with 16% health, it was very difficult for anyone to have hope. The wonder of competition is its unpredictability. Perhaps we will witness a miracle. Li Yibo laughed. That's to say, Coach Lee still looks favorably on Tang Rou. Pan Lin said, we've already reached this point. Tang Rou is a player full of energy, so who knows, she might achieve the inconceivable. Li Yibo said, alright, let's look forward to the result of what has been the focus of the past 5 rounds. Team Happy's Tang Rou vs Team Tiny Herb's Wang Gxe. Pan Lin announced. The television broadcaster made this announcement, and the live screens in the stadium displayed the next player from Tiny Herb who was about to play. But Wang Jiexi didn't hurry to go on stage, and instead waited for Xiao Yun to return. Seeing the captain looking at him, Xiao Yun lowered his head, and looked for a corner in which to hide. What's most fearsome about Tang Rou is not her technique, nor her hand speed, but her overwhelming determination. Quote, after Wang Jiexi spoke, he stepped toward the stage. Happy vs Tiny Herb, third match of the group arena. The final opponent in the 1v3. Win this, and she would complete her promise. Just one last step. However, Tang Rou was already powerless. Vacaria slid down from the sky, trailing behind him the glittering remnants of starlight from the dance of star extinction. A 1v3 is not so easy, Wang Jiexi said. In the third battle of the group arena, Wang Jiexi won. No damage taken. The audience was once again silent. If Tang Rou's 1v3 had succeeded, they would have been dissatisfied. But seeing her defeated so swiftly by Wang Jiexi, everyone felt a bit disappointed. They themselves couldn't say for what sort of outcome they had hoped. In Happy's player area, everything was even more still. Failing to complete a 1v3 was nothing. In fact, in terms of the match progression, for their first player to meet the opponent's third, they held a great advantage. But the outcome that this 1v3 failure implied. At this moment, no matter how hard Chen Guo tried, she couldn't squeeze out even a half corner of a smile. End chapter.